Well, we have gotten off into a very active tornado season. There's been over 500 confirmed tornadoes throughout the United States. That's about double the average, Jamie.
Yeah.
People are wondering, is this going to start to slow down as we get into the spring? And you wrote a good post about this and wanted to kind of get that spread out to other people.
Well, I guess the thing is, it's like just because it has been so active this early in the spring severe weather season doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to play out. Especially locally for the Ozarks. So that was kind of like one of the distinctions that I was seeing in the data. And right now, Matt's showing footage from that was just last week, Wednesday of last week, Lake City, Arkansas. I mean, they got hit with an EF3 tornado, 150 mile per hour maximum sustained winds or maximum gusts in that thing. And then that's just one of many at this stage, EF3 and EF4 tornadoes that have been hitting that same general area, eastern Arkansas, southeast Missouri, and western Kentucky.
It's areas really closer to the Mississippi that have been hit pretty hard. This is the total for Missouri, 57 total, 31 is your total in Arkansas. And the significant tornadoes, 13, at least EF2 or greater, 11 EF2 or greater for Arkansas. Those totals have really started to ramp up, and it's really for those areas further off to the east.
Those total tornado numbers for Missouri and Arkansas, I mean, those are kind of, you're reaching the upper limits. You're getting close to the record number of tornadoes reported in each of those areas, Missouri and Arkansas.
So we're off into a very active start of the year, but we're saying, hey, we don't think this is going to be really lasting once we get into the second half. And you did a really good post on this where you went back and you looked at very active years where we had, your 2011s where we had so many tornado outbreaks. That's the year that we had the Joplin tornado. And you notice, hey, that year got off to a slow start, then a really explosive finish. And most of these years that gets off to a very explosive, a very aggressive early tornado activity really start to taper off once you get into May.
Yeah, and what I'm really kind of thinking of is locally. Where does the tornado season go from where we are locally? What Matt's saying is, again, if you think back to big tornado years here in our area, last year was a big one.
Yeah.
Big April and May severe weather season.
I believe last year was the biggest since 2011.
The other year that I can think of was 2019. 2019, we had a big outbreak at the very end of April, and then we also had multiple outbreaks of tornadic weather during the course of 1 week. That kind of culminated on a Wednesday night where Jeff City got hit by, I believe it was an EF3 tornado. The Orinoco area got hit by an EF3 tornado, and this is all on the same day. So those were years where the severe weather season was more backloaded, and we had some big rounds of severe weather, including tornadoes. Again, 2019, last year, 2024. Other years where we got off to a really quick start, like we have this year. You can look back at, I believe, like 2017 was one.
Yeah, so let's look at this. So 2025, we have 513 tornadoes as of April 9th. Similar years, 2023, 530, so that's pretty similar to what we have. 2017, that's another year, 539. So both these years,
2012,
just a little bit more. 2012,
400. That was one year I can remember specifically because we had the leap day outbreak. So we had a big outbreak of tornadoes locally at the end of February.
Yeah.
We had a really big tornado outbreak east of us in not long thereafter in March, and then it got quiet. In fact, it got hot and dry in May, and that's the way it stayed as we worked into that summer. So what we're getting at is just because it has been so active doesn't mean that it's going to stay active locally in our area. And what we may find is that we've kind of had a front-loaded season where the back end of the severe weather season, the rest of April through May, isn't as active as it has been. And then if you look at years where it's been off to a slow start, and Matt was pointing out some of those.
2011, we have about, what would that be, about 200 more, maybe 250 more tornadoes than what 2011 had, but 2011 finished with 2,240.
2013 was a year where we were off to a slow start.
Last year, we got off to a slow start. We only had 266 tornadoes at the start of last year, and then we finished with nearly 2,000.
And I was going to say 2013 was another one, and the reason why I bring that one up is because in May, there were a bunch of tornadoes, especially in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They got really hammered in the month of May. So, again, what we're getting at is sometimes when you have a front-loaded season, the back end of the season quiets down, and vice versa. If you have a slow start to the season, maybe it's the back end of the season that winds up being very active, like we saw last year.
Not active for this week. That's something that we've been noticing. A big change and a big shift where we had thunderstorms so much of last week. Expecting quiet weather to linger for this week, linger for next week. It's kind of that last full week in April that we can start to see some weather returning.
I think the nearest chance. I mean, there have been a few hailers today over toward the Mississippi River.
Yeah, but we're missing out on that here in Springfield.
Right. The next chance that we might see a little bit of active weather, I think Wednesday night of next week, we may get into a setup where we could get some hail out of some of the thunderstorm activity. That would be all I would expect out of that.
Yeah.
And then it looks like the pattern will shift in a way so that by the last full week of April, so not after this weekend, but after the following weekend, that week does look more active. And the reason why it looks more active is it looks like we see the trough shift back into the western U.S. And when you shift the trough back into the western U.S., that allows the Gulf to open back up. Moisture moves, easily north through the middle of the country. And then you have these storms coming out of that western trough. And those storm systems are encountering again, high humidity air coming off the Gulf.
Yeah, this is what you're trying to talk about. You're seeing that trough developing, and that's going to provide waves of an opportunity of some more wet weather. Not for next week. It's the week after.
The week after. You tend to also have more of a contrast in temperatures so that you have across the middle of the country and into the east very warm conditions, and then in the west you have cold conditions with the trough. So that thermal contrast also plays a role in stronger jet energy and stronger storm systems.
Seeing that there. Let's do wide range forecasts. And you mentioned earlier, you're talking about looking at the pattern of May. And you said, hey, I think we're going to see some ridging that's going to form over the central U.S. A lot of times we call those in the summertime, we call them the death ridge because it sounds scary, but it's a term from meteorologists because, well, you're not going to get any storms. It's going to be a very quiet pattern. Meteorologists, they like to see some thunderstorms. You don't get that pattern too much once you have ridging over the central United States. And you're thinking we can get into a little bit more ridging over central U.S. that will really kind of tamper down these severe weather chances.
Yeah, so as Matt takes that forward through April, looking at the end of April, and then we get into the month of May, what you're looking are height anomalies. And the height anomalies tell us, where the ridges are or where the troughs are, or at least generally where they're going to be. And you can see that yellow-orange shading over the middle of the country. That says you have higher heights, and there's going to be a tendency for more ridging over the middle of the country. On the coasts, you see the little dip in the lines right there. That's a trough. That's where you're going to tend to have, again, cooler conditions. That also tends to be where you're going to have more active weather conditions on the east side of those trough axis. So right now, kind of looking at that pattern through the month of May, it looks like we may have a trough on the west coast, a trough on the east coast with general ridging in the middle of the country. And while that won't completely tamp down severe weather chances, it may put us in a spot where we tend to have normal to above normal temperatures and probably drier than normal conditions through the month of May. And if there are less opportunities at rain, there are going to be less opportunities probably at severe weather
for these storms to forming. And we're at nearly 6 inches of rain for the start of April, and we still have the back half of the month to get through. Everyone loves rain. I just don't think people, a lot of times when you're in the spring, to get the rain, it has to come with these storms, and that's what we're going to try to avoid and hopefully see less into the ending of this spring season.
So, kind of wrapping this up, I mean, the hope is that, again, just because we've been off to a very busy start to the severe weather season, when you look back over the last 15 years, oftentimes, locally in our area, we see the severe weather season quiet down. So we have a front-loaded severe weather season. Hopefully that bears out. Some of the longer-range guidance that we're looking at right now does indicate that we may be in a pattern as we go through the month of May, which is typically kind of the month for severe weather,
Yeah.
we may be in a pattern that may tend to suppress that risk of severe weather to some extent. We're probably still going to get some severe weather, just hopefully not like last May.
That's good news.
Yeah.
You know, we've been active. We're getting quiet for the next couple of weeks. You think generally it's going to be staying kind of leaning towards that quieter side of things. Of course, it's the Ozarks. Of course, we're going to have thunderstorms popping up. We're not saying we're never going to get another thunderstorm this year. We're not saying we're never going to get another tornado this year. It's just leaning towards a less active pattern than how we've started off.
Yeah.
We'll have more updates for you guys here on our website, ozarksfirst.com. Thanks for watching.